have enough to do in this association by running it. You have not lifted a single finger to help me here. You are an antagonistic, don't interrupt me, rogue board member.
You finished.
You represent a group of disgruntled owners that would like nothing for me to leave. But let me give you a news flash. This community has never looked better, has never run better, and has never been better. So the half a dozen of you in here are irrelevant. I am sick and tired of you people putting a corkscrew roadblock in everything that is done. And moving forward.
It's just that you follow the rules.
What do you think I do, sir? Maybe you need to read them.
You don't follow the rules because this
you, instead of complying with what was cited to you, you called a lawyer.
No.
You call a lawyer. All you people do is call, and then you have the audacity to say to me that...
Did you just call me a bitch? Diane Chambers stood in my driveway through the December cold. Her phone already raised and recording. Her voice sharp enough to cut through the winter air. I didn't say anything to you. I said, keeping my voice level despite the adrenaline spike. I was talking to the contractor about the permit. You called me a bitch, she shouted louder, stepping closer through patches of snow. I heard you. Everyone heard you. Behind her. 2 other HOA board members shifted uncomfortably through the frozen morning. Clearly uncertain, her husband Richard stood farther back, saying nothing, looking anywhere but at me. Your camera's recording, I said calmly, gesturing at her phone. Play it back. You'll hear I never said that. Don't you dare tell me what's on my recording. Diane's face flushed despite the December cold. You think you can talk to me that way? You think you can disrespect the HOA president? This was the 3rd time in 2 weeks she'd done this, shown up. I started recording. Accused me of something her camera somehow never captured. The contractor beside me cleared his throat through the winter air. Ma'am, I was standing right here. Mr. Washington didn't say anything like that. Diane whirled on him. Phone still recording. And WHO, are you? Do you have a vendor permit? Let me see your ID. He's licensed and permitted. I said, pulling out the paperwork I'd learned to keep on hand. Everything's filed with the county. You want to see it? I want to see HIS permit to work in this community, Diane snapped. That phone still pointed at us through the December morning. The HOA board has rules about contractors. The county permit supersedes HOA rules. I replied, you know that. Her jaw set, and I could see the calculation behind her eyes through the falling snow looking for another angle. Another accusation. Another way to assert control. This isn't over, she said, lowering the phone finally. The board is going to hear about this harassment. I'll be sure to file my own report, I said quietly, with timestamps and witnesses. She glared at me for a long moment through the December cold, then turned and walked back to her car. Richard trailing behind like he'd done this 100 times before. The contractor exhaled slowly as her car disappeared down the snow-covered street. Man, what is her problem? Control, I said, watching snowflakes settle on my driveway. She can't stand that I won't back down. But what I didn't tell him, what I was only beginning to understand through that December morning, was that Diane Chambers was about to make a mistake so desperate, so blatant, that it would cost her everything she'd spent 8 years building. And it would start with an elderly woman in a nursing home who just wanted to vote in peace. But I'm getting ahead of myself through the winter cold. Let me back up to 3 months earlier, when this whole thing began. I'd moved into Riverside Commons in September, buying a modest 3-bedroom house that needed work but had good bones, and a backyard big enough for my daughter Keisha to play in when she visited on weekends. The neighborhood was quiet. Middle class. The kind of place where people waved from porches and complained about lawn care in that comfortable way that meant they had nothing real to worry about. Maple-lined streets. Well-maintained sidewalks. Houses built in the 1970s and 80s that had weathered decades with dignity. I'm Marcus Washington, 42 years old. Civil engineer by trade, divorced father of 1. I'd spent the last 15 years designing infrastructure projects, roads, drainage systems, water treatment facilities. The kinds of things most people never think about until they break. I specialized in problem solving, finding elegant solutions to complex technical challenges. It was work that required patience, precision, and the ability to see patterns that others missed. I'm also black, which shouldn't matter in 2025, but somehow still does in ways both obvious and subtle. Not always in grand gestures, but in small moments, the way people sometimes assume I'm the contractor rather than the engineer. The way concerns get raised about property values when I move in. The way I've learned to document everything because my word alone isn't always enough. The first time I met Diane Chambers was at a neighborhood gathering in early October. Before the weather turned cold and autumn leaves still clung to the trees, she approached me with a clipboard and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes through the mild afternoon. I saw her fully then for the first time, a woman in her late 40s, compact and direct in her movements. Every gesture purposeful. She wore a light beige sleeveless top despite the autumn chill, fitted and professional looking in a way that suggested she'd dressed deliberately to project authority. Her hair was short and dark, styled in a no-nonsense cut that framed sharp features, high cheekbones, narrow eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw. A metal watch glinted on her wrist as she gestured with the clipboard, simple, functional, the kind that told you she valued precision over decoration. She looked like someone who'd built a career on being in charge and wasn't about to let that go. "Welcome to Riverside Commons," she said, extending her hand with practiced warmth. "I'm Diane Chambers, HOA president. I wanted to make sure you received your welcome packet. Marcus Washington," I replied, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm, almost challenging. "I got the packet. Thank you. Very thorough. Excellent." She consulted her clipboard with practiced efficiency. "That metal watch catching the afternoon light. I see you're planning some renovations. You'll need to submit plans to the Architectural Review Committee before starting any exterior work. The packet explains the process, but I'm happy to walk you through it if you have questions." "Already submitted," I said. "Got approval 2 weeks ago. Starting work next month." Her smile tightened fractionally, and something shifted behind her eyes. "Wonderful. Just making sure everyone follows proper procedures. We pride ourselves on maintaining community standards. That should have been the end of it, a simple welcome. A simple confirmation. But I saw something flicker across her face when I mentioned having already followed the rules. Not pleasure that I'd done things correctly. Something else. Disappointment. Maybe. Or irritation that there was nothing to correct. No reason to extend the conversation into an opportunity to demonstrate authority. "Well," she said after a pause, "if you need anything, the board office is always open. We like to know our residents. I appreciate that," I replied, noting the way she emphasized "no" like surveillance disguised as neighborliness. Over the next 2 months, through autumn, turning to December, I learned that Diane Chambers ran Riverside Commons like a personal fiefdom, and knowing the residents meant controlling them. She showed up unannounced at residents' homes, demanding entry to inspect for violations that weren't in the HOA bylaws. She blocked vendors from working, insisting on reviewing their credentials even when they were properly licensed and had already been approved. She sent violation notices for infractions so minor a trash can left out 4 hours too long. A seasonal decoration 6 inches over the allowed size. A car parked incorrectly despite being fully within property lines that they seemed designed more to assert authority than enforce actual rules. And she recorded everything. Always. Her phone was perpetually out. Perpetually recording. Capturing evidence of violations that somehow never looked quite as serious on video as her written reports claimed. The disconnect between what she filmed and what she described was systematic enough to be deliberate. I watched her operate for weeks before she turned her attention fully on me, studying her methods like I would study a failing system in one of my engineering projects. I watched her corner Mrs. Patterson about a garden gnome that violated community aesthetics, recording the entire interaction while Mrs. Patterson apologized repeatedly for decoration that had been there for 5 years without complaint. I watched her threaten to fine the Johnsons because their teenage son's car was too old and unsightly despite being perfectly functional, legal, and parked on their own property. I watched her shout at a landscape crew that they were destroying property values by trimming hedges on a Saturday morning, demanding to see their business licenses while standing in their way. I watched her block a furniture delivery, claiming the truck was too large for residential streets and refusing to move her car until the driver showed her paperwork he wasn't legally required to produce. I watched her tell elderly Mr. Dat Chen that his holiday lights were excessive when they were identical to decorations on 6 other houses, and that she'd fine him if they weren't removed immediately. And through it all, Richard Chambers trailed behind her, a small, silent man in his 60s who'd once been a lawyer until he was disbarred and briefly jailed for defrauding elderly clients out of their savings. That detail I learned from my neighbor, Tom Bradley, who'd lived in Riverside Commons for 12 years and had watched Diane's reign with growing concern through the autumn months. She's gotten worse, Tom told me over coffee one November morning as the first winter chill settled in. Used to be, she at least pretended to care about the community. Now it's just power for power's sake. Why doesn't anyone challenge her? I asked. Watching frost form on the window, Tom sighed. Breath fogging in the cold air. People are scared. She retaliates. You file a complaint. Suddenly you're getting violation notices every week. Your vendors get harassed. Your neighbors get told you're difficult and causing problems. She's systematic about it. He paused, looking at me directly. But you're not backing down. Are you? I haven't done anything wrong. I said, I follow the rules. File the paperwork. Do everything by the book. That's exactly what pisses her off, Tom said with a slight smile. She can't control you. She can't find a violation because you don't give her one. And she can't stand people she can't control. He was right. By mid-December, through increasing cold and snow, Diane had focused her attention on me with an intensity that felt almost personal, and I'd started keeping detailed records of every interaction. The false accusations started first, following a pattern that became predictable. She'd show up while I was talking to contractors, turn on her camera, and claim I'd insulted her always, something her recording somehow never captured. The first time was November 20th, while I was reviewing plans with my electrician in the driveway. "You just called me a C times NT," she'd shouted. Phone raised, appearing suddenly through the late autumn cold. "I didn't," I'd replied calmly, knowing my own security cameras were recording from 3 angles. "I haven't said anything to you. I'm discussing electrical work." "You're LYing!" she'd screamed, trying to provoke a reaction she could capture. "I heard you. Everyone heard you." The electrician had looked bewildered. "Ma'am, I've been here the whole time." He didn't say anything like that. "You're covering for him," Diane had snapped. "I'm filing a complaint with the board about this harassment." I'd simply pulled out my phone and shown her the timestamp on my security camera system. "Everything's recorded. Multiple angles. You're welcome to review the footage." She'd left, but returned 3 days later with the same accusation. Different words. And then again 4 days after that. Each time, her camera was recording. Each time. The audio somehow never captured what she claimed I'd said. Each time, I stayed calm, documented everything, and refused to give her the reaction she wanted. The fake assault claim came on a Tuesday morning 2 weeks before Christmas through falling snow. I was checking my mailbox when Diane's car pulled up. She got out quickly. Phone already recording. That light beige sleeveless top visible under an open winter coat despite the December cold. Her short dark hair barely moving in the wind. "Marcus Washington," she called out, walking toward me with deliberate steps through patches of snow, her metal watch glinting in the weak winter sunlight. I turned, said nothing. I'm just waited, with my hands full of mail. She stopped 3 feet away from me. Phone raised and recording. Then she stumbled backward slightly. Not a trip. Not a slip. Just a deliberate half step, and shouted through the December morning, "You pushed me! Everyone saw that! You just assaulted me! I hadn't moved!" My hands were full of mail and bills. I was standing exactly where I'd been for the past 2 minutes. "I didn't touch you," I said calmly. "Your camera will show that." "My camera shows exactly what happened," Diane snapped. That metal watch visible as she gestured. "You're going to jail for assault! I'm calling the police right now!" 2 neighbors had come out of their houses. Drawn by the shouting through the December cold, "Mrs. Chambers." One called out, "He didn't touch you. We saw the whole thing." "You're both lying to protect him," Diane wheeled on them. "This is witness intimidation. You're all going to be charged." I pulled out my phone calmly and opened the app for my security camera system. The cameras recorded everything. I said quietly, "From 3 different angles. You stumbled backward on your own. I never moved toward you. I never touched you." The footage shows that clearly her face flushed despite the winter cold. That beige top rising and falling with angry breaths. "You think you're so smart. You think you can get away with this. I'm not trying to get away with anything." I replied, "I'm just checking my mail." She stood there through the December morning, phone still recording, looking for another angle. Another way to turn this into the confrontation she wanted. Finding none? "The board is going to hear about this," she said finally. "I'll make sure they do." I agreed. With full video documentation from multiple angles and witness statements, she drove away through the snow. and I stood in the December cold for a long moment. Watching flakes settle on my driveway, Tom appeared at my fence line. "She's unraveling," he said quietly. "She's desperate." I corrected, "And desperate people do dangerous things." I had no idea how right I was. But the pattern continued through December as snow fell heavier and the days grew shorter. Diane appeared in my driveway 11 more times over the next 2 weeks. Always with her phone recording. Always with a new accusation. I'd threatened her. I'd blocked her car. I'd damaged her property. I'd intimidated other residents. None of it was true. All of it was documented on my security cameras, showing the exact opposite. She blocked my contractor 6 separate times, demanding paperwork she had no legal right to see, standing in the driveway until the police were called to explain that she needed to leave. She sent me 14 violation notices, everything from excessive noise during permitted construction hours to unapproved paint colors on trim that matched the approved plans exactly to improper storage of construction materials that were in my garage. I responded to each one with documentation, permits, timestamps, photographs, witness statements. Each response was professional. Factual, impossible to dispute, which only made her angrier. The harassment wasn't limited to me. Mrs. Patterson received 8 violation notices in 1 week after she'd witnessed the fake assault incident and supported my account. The Johnson's son found his car mysteriously reported for suspicious activity 3 times, despite being parked legally on his parents' property. Tom got cited for excessive outdoor storage because he had a recycling bin visible from the street, the same bin that had been in the same spot for 6 years. Anyone who supported me, anyone who didn't immediately back Diane's version of events, became a target. It was systematic. It was deliberate. It was designed to isolate me and demonstrate the cost of defiance, but it had the opposite effect. People started talking quietly among themselves, comparing notes, realizing that what they thought were isolated incidents were actually part of a pattern, and patterns, once recognized, become evidence. The HOA election was scheduled for early January, and by late December, through deepening snow, 3 board members had quietly approached me with an unexpected request. The first was Helen Rodriguez, who'd served on the board for 4 years and had watched Diane's behavior escalate. She came to my house on a December evening, knocked quietly, and got straight to the point when I invited her in from the cold. "People are tired of the harassment," she said, sitting at my kitchen table. "But they're afraid to speak up because they know what happens if they do. Violation notices, retaliation. Diane makes their lives miserable. I've noticed." I said, "We want to know if you'd consider running for president." Helen continued, "Several of us on the board have discussed it. If you run, you'll have support. Quiet support, but real support. People will vote for change if they think they'll actually be safe from retaliation afterward." "And if I lose?" I asked. "Then you'll face exactly what everyone else faces who opposes her." Helen admitted. Constant harassment. Violation notices. She'll make owning your home miserable. So, I'm already facing that. I pointed out, "True," Helen said, "but if you win, everything changes. The harassment stops. The retaliation stops. People can live in peace again." I'd spent 2 days thinking about it through the December cold. Running meant becoming an even bigger target. Running meant more confrontations, more false accusations, More attempts to provoke reactions that could be captured on video and used against me. But not running meant watching Diane continue to terrorize a community that just wanted to live in peace. My daughter Keisha helped me decide during our video call that weekend. "Dad," she said, her 12-year-old face serious on the screen. "You always tell me to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. Isn't this one of those times?" She was absolutely correct. I filed my candidacy papers on December 20th through a snowstorm, submitting everything properly and officially to the HOA board according to the bylaws. Diane's response came within 3 hours, an email blast to all residents claiming I was unqualified, disruptive, under investigation for multiple violations, and not representative of community values, none of which was true. I responded with a simple email the next day, factual, professional, listing my qualifications: engineering degree, 15 years of professional experience, board service in my previous community, no violations of any kind, and my vision for the community. I didn't attack Diane. I didn't need to. I talked about treating residents with respect, about enforcing rules fairly, about HOA leadership that served the community rather than controlled it. The response was immediate and overwhelming. 20 residents emailed me privately offering support. 15 more asked to put up yard signs once I had them printed. Tom agreed to be my campaign manager, and Helen offered to help organize a candidates forum. Diane's second response was to file an emergency board motion claiming my candidacy was invalid because I hadn't completed the full residency requirement. I provided documentation showing I'd moved in 4 months ago, well beyond the 3-month requirement in the bylaws. Her third response was to claim I had outstanding violations that disqualified me from running. I provided documentation from the county showing 0 violations, plus responses to all 14 of her spurious notices proving they were baseless. Her fourth response was the one that made me realize just how far she was willing to go. She sent an email to all residents with photographs attached. The photos showed suspicious individuals near my property, implying drug activity or criminal behavior. The individuals in the photos were my daughter's friends' parents who'd helped me move furniture. The suspicious activity was them unloading boxes. The implication was clear and ugly and designed to play on racist stereotypes I'd dealt with my entire life. Tom called me immediately. "This crosses a line. This is beyond HOA politics. This is what desperation looks like," I said quietly. "And it's documented." She just put her own racism in writing and sent it to 300 people. Within hours, Diane's email became a liability instead of an attack. Residents started replying to the email chain, pointing out that the suspicious individuals were clearly helping someone move, that there was nothing remotely suspicious about the photos, that the implications were inappropriate and offensive. Helen forwarded the email chain to an attorney friend who specialized in civil rights cases. "This is actionable," the attorney told us. "This could be the basis for a harassment lawsuit. At minimum, it's defamation with pretty clear racist overtones." I didn't file suit, not yet, but I made sure Diane knew the option existed. The next 2 weeks through the December cold were a masterclass in escalating desperation. Diane showed up at my house 11 more times with her camera, trying to provoke incidents. She sent 23 more violation notices for violations that didn't exist. She blocked my contractor 8 more times. She told residents at a community safety meeting that I was dangerous and unstable and that they should avoid contact with me. She distributed flyers claiming I had a history of aggressive behavior, a complete fabrication. She even filed a police report claiming I'd vandalized her car, providing photos of a scratch that her own security footage would have shown I couldn't have caused. Each time. I documented everything calmly and professionally. Each time, I filed reports with the board. Each time. I made sure the community saw the evidence of her behavior, and each time, she escalated. "You think you can win?" She shouted at me one afternoon through falling snow. Her short, dark hair dusted with white flakes. That metal watch visible as she gestured. Her beige top partly hidden under her winter coat. "You think they'll vote for you? I think they'll vote for whoever they believe will serve the community best." I replied calmly. "This is my community," she snapped. "I've been president for 8 years. 8 years of keeping this place running, maintaining standards, protecting property values. Then you should have no problem winning on your record," I said. Her face contorted with fury through the December cold. My record? My record? I've done everything for these people, and this is how they repay me? By supporting you? I'm not asking anyone to support me over you. I replied, I'm asking them to support what they believe will make this community better. If that's you, great. If it's me, that's democracy. Democracy. She spat the word like it was poisonous. You have no idea what it takes to run an HOA. No idea what I deal with, what I've sacrificed, what I've had to do to keep things running. Then help me understand. I said, not through violation notices and false accusations, but through actual conversation about community governance. She stared at me for a long moment through the falling snow. Then she turned and walked away. And I knew that conversation would never happen. Because Diane Chambers wasn't interested in governance, she was interested in control. And control doesn't negotiate. It dominates, or it fails. Tom caught up with me that evening as December darkness fell early. She's scared, he said quietly. Really scared. The voting lists came out today. It's closer than anyone expected. How close? I asked. Could go either way. He admitted there are maybe 6 votes that could swing it, and one of those is Eleanor Hayes. Who's Eleanor Hayes? I asked. 91 years old. Been in the community for 32 years. Sharp as a tack. Despite her age, she's in a nursing home now, health issues. Needs full-time care, but her mind is still completely clear. Her daughter, Patricia, handles most of her affairs. But Eleanor insists on voting in every HOA election, has since she moved here. Tom paused through the December cold, and Eleanor always votes for change. Always backs whoever's running against the incumbent, says it's healthy for a community to rotate leadership. So she'd probably vote for me. I said, that's what Diane knows. Tom replied, and that's what worries me. Because Patricia already filed an absentee ballot request for her mother, everything's proper. Everything's legal. But, he trailed off. And I finished the thought, but Diane's desperate enough to do something about it. We looked at each other through the winter darkness, both understanding what we weren't quite saying out loud. We need to watch this closely. I said finally. Tom nodded. Very closely. Because if Eleanor's vote could tip the election, Diane knows it too, and I don't trust her not to try something. What could she even do? I asked. It's an absentee ballot. Patricia files it directly with the board. I don't know. Tom admitted, But Diane's been creative before, and she's never been this desperate. 2 days later, I found out exactly how creative desperation could make someone. The nursing home visit happened on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 days before the election, when most people were at work and the December snow was falling steadily. I only found out about it because Patricia Hayes called me at 2:30 in the afternoon, her voice shaking with fury. She went to see my mother. Patricia said without preamble when I answered. Diane Chambers walked into my mother's nursing home and talked to her about the election. When? I asked, already grabbing my coat against the December cold. Today. Maybe an hour ago. The facility just called me because something seemed off. They said Diane claimed to be checking on HOA members and spent 20 minutes alone with my mother in her room. My stomach tightened. Did Eleanor vote? That's the thing. Patricia said, and I could hear tears of frustration in her voice. Diane left with an envelope. The staff thought it was just papers or documents, but when I got there 10 minutes ago, my mother's absentee ballot was gone. Diane took it. Did Eleanor fill it out? I asked. Already knowing the answer would complicate everything. She says Diane helped her understand the candidates better. Patricia said, her voice breaking slightly. She says she voted for Diane because Diane explained that you'd threatened her, that you'd assaulted her, that you were dangerous and unstable, and that the community wasn't safe with you. I closed my eyes against the December afternoon. Patricia, I need you to listen carefully. Did Eleanor actually fill out and seal that ballot? Did she sign it? Yes. Patricia said. Diane watched her do it, checked that everything was filled out correctly, then took the envelope, saying she'd make sure it got submitted properly and that Eleanor shouldn't worry about the process. That's illegal, I said. Ballot tampering. Electoral fraud. Diane can't take possession of someone else's ballot. She's not family. She's not an authorized election official. Under state law, that's a crime. I know. Patricia replied. That's why I called you immediately. Because here's the thing, Marcus. I already filled out my mother's real ballot 2 weeks ago. The one she actually wanted to cast before Diane showed up and scared her with lies. What did it say? I asked. Though I could guess, she voted for you. Patricia said quietly. Before Diane arrived and filled her head with false accusations, my mother told me she was tired of being afraid, tired of Diane's harassment, tired of watching neighbors get bullied. She wanted change. She wanted someone who'd treat people with respect. Then we make sure that vote counts. I said, but Diane has the other ballot. Patricia pointed out, she'll submit it. She'll claim it's legitimate. And who's going to believe an elderly woman in a nursing home changed her mind about which ballot is real? Let Diane submit it. I replied, my engineering mind already working through the problem. Because if she submits a ballot she personally collected from a voter after helping that voter fill it out, after pressuring that voter with false information in direct violation of election law, she's committed a crime. Patricia finished, on camera? I added, I'm guessing the nursing home has security footage? Yes. Patricia said, and I could hear hope returning to her voice. The front desk. The hallways. Probably Eleanor's room entrance. Yes. They definitely have cameras. Then here's what we're going to do. I said through the December cold, you're going to request that footage immediately. You're going to file the real ballot, Eleanor's original choice, through proper channels. And you're going to document everything that happened today with the facility staff as witnesses. And what are you going to do? Patricia asked. I'm going to trust the process, I said, and document the crime when it happens. The next day, Diane submitted Eleanor's ballot to the board. I know because Helen called me that evening to let me know. She hand-delivered it this morning, Helen said. Claimed Eleanor asked her to make sure it got to us safely. Put it right in the ballot box during regular office hours, with me watching. Did you open it? I asked. Can't. Helen replied, Sealed ballots stay sealed until counting day. That's the rule. Good. I said, because when you count it, there's going to be questions about how it was obtained. What do you mean? Helen asked. I explained everything: the nursing home visit, the pressure, the false accusations, the illegal collection of the ballot. Helen was quiet for a long moment. That's a felony, she said finally. Yes. I agreed. And we have documentation, security footage, witness statements, and Patricia filing an affidavit about her mother's actual vote before Diane's interference. This is going to get ugly. Helen said, It already is, I replied. But now it's going to be ugly with evidence. The election was held on a Saturday morning, January 3rd. Through fresh snow that had fallen overnight, the voting took place at the community center, a modest building that usually hosted children's soccer registration and neighborhood potlucks, now transformed into the center of community democracy. I arrived at 8 in the morning, an hour before voting began, and found 50 residents already lined up outside through the December cold. We wanted to vote early, Mrs. Patterson told me, her breath fogging in the winter air. Wanted to make sure our voices were heard inside. The community center had been set up with voting booths and a ballot box, all monitored by Helen and 2 other board members who had agreed to oversee the process. Diane was already there. That light beige sleeveless top visible under her winter coat, which she kept dramatically draped over her shoulders despite the indoor heating. Her short, dark hair perfect, despite the cold outside. Her metal watch catching the fluorescent lights as she worked the room. She smiled and greeted residents like she'd already won. Like the outcome was a foregone conclusion. She didn't look worried. She looked confident. Because she believed she had Eleanor Hayes' vote secure in her pocket. What she didn't know was that Patricia had filed an affidavit with the board the night before, documenting the nursing home visit and providing security footage showing Diane entering Eleanor's room and leaving with an envelope. What she didn't know was that Patricia had also submitted Eleanor's original ballot, the real vote, along with a notarized statement from Eleanor herself. I recorded after Diane left, explaining that she'd been pressured and frightened and that her original vote for me represented her true choice. What Diane didn't know was that the board had already consulted with an attorney about ballot fraud and electoral interference. Voting continued through the morning as snow fell outside. I stood near the back, watching residents I'd come to know over the past 4 months, Mrs. Patterson, the Johnsons, Tom and his wife, Mr. Chen with his now approved holiday lights, dozens of others who'd faced Diane's harassment and were finally able to vote for change without fear of immediate retaliation. Keisha arrived around 10, brought by her mother who wanted to support me despite our divorce. This is democracy, baby. I told my daughter as we watched people voting, this is what it looks like when people stand up for what they believe in. Are you going to win? Keisha asked. I don't know. I admitted. But I ran. I stood up. That's what matters. She hugged me. I'm proud of you, Dad. The counting took 90 minutes through the December morning. Conducted in a separate room by the 3 board members while the rest of us waited in the main hall. Diane paced near the front, phone out, but not recording for once. That metal watch glinting as she checked the time repeatedly. Richard sat in the back, saying nothing, looking like he knew this pattern from personal experience. Finally, at 12:15, the board members emerged from the counting room. Helen Rodriguez stepped forward, holding a piece of paper, her face carefully neutral. The votes have been counted and verified. She announced to the hushed room, in the race for HOA, we have the following results. She paused, and I saw Diane lean forward slightly, that beige top rising with a deep breath, hands gripping the chair arms. 47 votes. Diane's face showed relief, a smile beginning to form. 48 votes. The room went completely silent through the December cold, then erupted. Diane shot to her feet, that beige top and metal watch visible as she gestured wildly. That's impossible! Recount. I demand a recount. The count has been verified twice, Helen said calmly. The results stand. Marcus Washington is the new HOA president. No, Diane's voice cut through the celebration. Someone cheated. Someone stole votes. This election is invalid. That's when Patricia Hayes stood up slowly from her seat near the middle of the room, her mother Eleanor beside her in a wheelchair. Both of them having arrived quietly during the voting. No one stole anything. Patricia said clearly, her voice carrying through the community center. My mother cast her legal ballot, the one she wanted to cast. Diane's face went white despite the winter cold outside. Eleanor voted for me. I have her ballot. No. Patricia said, you have a ballot you obtained illegally by entering a nursing home, pressuring my elderly mother with false accusations, and taking possession of voting materials you had no legal right to handle. She held up her phone, playing security footage on the screen for everyone to see. Diane entering the nursing home. Diane in Eleanor's room doorway. That beige top and short dark hair clearly visible. Diane leaving 23 minutes later with an envelope. Clear. Undeniable. Illegal. She asked me to help, Diane shouted. She wanted my assistance. She was confused about the candidates. The law is very clear. I said, standing up through the December morning, no one may take possession of another person's ballot except for specified family members or authorized election officials. You're neither. You set me up! Diane wheeled on me. Phone coming out now. Recording finally. You planned this. You manipulated an elderly woman. I never met Eleanor Hayes until today, I replied quietly. Patricia contacted me after you illegally obtained that ballot. Everything that happened was your choice. The room was dead silent, except for Diane's harsh breathing through the winter air. This isn't over. She hissed. Finally. That metal watch catching light as she lowered her phone. I'll file a complaint. I'll sue. I'll take this to court. You'll step down? Helen interrupted, her voice carrying steel. Effective immediately. The board has already consulted with legal counsel about this incident. We'll be referring this matter to the county election board for investigation. She paused. And possibly to law enforcement for potential criminal charges. Diane looked around the room through the December cold at faces that had once feared her, that now looked at her with something closer to pity mixed with relief. Richard stood at the back, saying nothing, looking at the floor like he'd seen this kind of downfall before with his own career. "You people deserve what you get," Diane said finally, her voice cold. That beige top and short hair somehow looking less authoritative. "Now, you have no idea how to run a community. No idea what I did to keep this place respectable. You're going to destroy everything I built. Then it's a good thing we elected someone who values people over power," Tom said from the crowd. Diane gathered her coat and her phone, that metal watch glinting one final time as she turned toward the door through the December morning. She paused at the threshold, looking back at the community she'd controlled for 8 years. "This isn't over," she said again, but her voice had lost its edge. "Yes," I replied quietly. "It is." She left, and the December cold swept in briefly before the door closed behind her. The room exhaled collectively, then people started talking quietly at first, then louder, releasing tension that had been building for years. Mrs. Patterson approached me with tears in her eyes. "Thank you. You don't know what it means to finally feel safe in my own home. To not wake up wondering what violation notice I'll get today for nothing. We all deserve to feel safe." I said, "That's what community is supposed to be." Over the next hour, I learned what the election meant to people. The Johnson's son could park without harassment. Contractors could work without being blocked. Mr. Chen could keep his decorations. Mrs. Patterson could have her garden gnome in peace. Small things. Normal things. The things Diane had taken away through 8 years of control disguised as community standards. Patricia approached me before she left with Eleanor, carefully maneuvering the wheelchair through the community center doors. "Thank you for standing up," she said, "for all of us, but especially for my mother." She was terrified after Diane left that day. Terrified that she'd done something wrong, that she'd be in trouble. No one should feel that way about exercising their right to vote. "Thank you for protecting that right," I replied, "for documenting what happened and making sure Eleanor's real voice was heard." Eleanor looked up at me from her wheelchair, her eyes sharp despite her 91 years and the health issues that required her nursing home care. "Young man," she said clearly, her voice carrying the wisdom of decades. "I knew what I was doing when I voted for you. You remind me of why I moved to this community 32 years ago. Because people cared about each other more than they cared about power. Because neighbors helped neighbors instead of threatening them. We're going to get back to that. I promised through the December cold. I believe you will," she said. "And if you need any advice from an old woman who's seen a lot of HOA politics in her time, you know where to find me." I smiled. "I might take you up on that." The investigation into Diane's nursing home visit took 6 weeks through January and into early February as winter began its slow retreat. The county election board reviewed the security footage frame by frame, interviewed Eleanor and multiple nursing home staff members, examined both ballots, the one Diane had taken and the one Patricia had legally submitted, and consulted with election law experts about the specific violations involved. Their conclusion was unambiguous and damning. Diane Chambers had violated multiple provisions of state election law by entering a restricted care facility under false pretenses, pressuring a vulnerable voter with demonstrably false information, taking physical possession of a ballot that didn't belong to her, and attempting to suppress that voter's legitimate choice through intimidation and misrepresentation. The report used words like systematic, deliberate, and predatory. Criminal charges weren't ultimately filed. Eleanor didn't want to press charges, worried about the stress of a trial at her age. And the election results had already been certified and accepted. But Diane was permanently banned from holding HOA office in any capacity in any community. Her actions were documented in a public report that would follow her if she ever tried to join another HOA board. Her husband, Richard, already disbarred and with a fraud conviction on his record from his scheme defrauding elderly clients, faced renewed scrutiny from probation officers concerned about his proximity to another potential fraud case involving an elderly victim. Questions were raised about whether he'd advised or assisted Diane in her scheme, though nothing was ever proven. They moved out of Riverside Commons in late March as snow finally melted and the first signs of spring appeared on the trees. The sale was quiet, handled through attorneys. No goodbye parties or farewell gatherings. They left no forwarding address with the HOA office. I heard later from Tom that Diane had started dressing better during her final weeks in the community, better coats, nicer accessories, as if appearance could somehow restore the authority she'd lost. But authority built on fear and control doesn't recover from exposure to truth and accountability. My first acts as president were simple through February and March. I eliminated unannounced home inspections. I clarified violation notices, required evidence, and reasonable response time. I established a resident advisory committee. I made vendor approval transparent. I implemented a formal appeals process. Small changes. Normal governance. The things that should have been happening all along in a community association designed to serve its members rather than control them. Tom was elected vice president in a special board election. And together, we rebuilt trust, one interaction at a time, through the warming spring. We held monthly coffee hours where residents could raise concerns without fear of retaliation or violation notices. We published clear, simple guidelines about community standards, removing vague language that had allowed for arbitrary enforcement. We treated people like adults who wanted to take care of their property, not children who needed constant supervision and threats. We focused on actual problems, like organizing neighborhood watch for real security concerns, coordinating bulk trash pickup, planning community events rather than manufacturing violations to justify authority. 6 months into my term, on a warm July afternoon, Mrs. Patterson invited me to a community barbecue in the park area near the community center. "Look around," she said, gesturing at neighbors talking and laughing in the summer sunshine. Children playing on the grass without parents worrying about excessive noise violations. This is what it was supposed to be, what it should have been all along. People living together in peace. It's what it will be going forward, I said, watching the Johnson's son teaching younger kids how to throw a football. His car parked nearby without anyone caring about its age or appearance. She tried to make us afraid of each other. Mrs. Patterson continued, afraid that if we were friendly with the wrong people, we'd become targets too. She wanted us isolated and scared. That's how control works. I replied, division and fear, making sure people don't trust each other enough to organize or resist. Well, we're not afraid anymore. Mrs. Patterson said with satisfaction, thanks to you. Thanks to Eleanor Hayes. I corrected. And Patricia. And everyone who voted for change, even when they were scared of what might happen, I just gave people an option. They made the brave choice. Keisha visited that weekend, and I took her around the neighborhood on a Saturday morning, introducing her to people who'd become friends rather than adversaries. Everyone's really nice, she observed. Not like what you told me about before. They were always nice. I said they were just scared. When people feel safe, you see who they really are. I'm proud of you. Dad, Keisha said as we walked. You stood up even when it was hard. Even when that woman was really mean to you, I had a good teacher, I replied, smiling at her. Someone who reminded me that doing the right thing matters even when it costs you something. She grinned. That's because I have a good teacher too. Later that evening, sitting on my deck as summer evenings settled over Riverside Commons with the kind of peaceful quiet that 4 months ago would have been interrupted by Diane showing up with her phone and false accusations, I thought about everything that had happened through those December months. About false accusations and fake assaults and desperate attempts to cling to power. About a 91-year-old woman who just wanted her vote to count and a daughter who made sure it did. About a community that had been afraid and was learning to trust again. About what it meant to stand up when standing up was hard. I thought about Diane too, wherever she was, whatever she was doing. I hoped she'd learned something from the experience, though I suspected she hadn't. People who build their identity on controlling others rarely accept that the problem was never about the people they controlled. It was always about their need to control, their fear of being ordinary, their belief that authority was something you seized rather than something you earned through service. My phone buzzed with a message from Tom. Board meeting tomorrow. 7 p.m. We need to discuss the fall festival planning. Helen has some great ideas about including more families. Normal HOA business. The kind that focused on bringing people together rather than keeping them in line. I replied, I'll be there. Then I sat back and watched the evening light fade over a community that was finally, slowly, becoming what it should have been all along. A place where people lived in peace, where following the rules wasn't about fear but about mutual respect, where leadership meant service, not control, where democracy, real democracy, with fair elections and honest votes actually meant something. Diane Chambers had spent 8 years building a kingdom of fear, maintained through harassment and false accusations and systematic intimidation. She'd lost it all in one desperate act captured on security cameras in a nursing home on a December afternoon. And in her place, a community had voted for something simpler but infinitely more valuable. The chance to live without being afraid, the chance to have neighbors instead of targets, the chance to be part of something built on trust instead of fear. The December snow that had fallen during those contentious months was long gone now, melted into spring that became summer, that would turn to fall and eventually back to winter in the natural cycle of seasons. But the memory of that winter remained a reminder that sometimes standing up costs you something. And sometimes it costs you nothing except the fear of what might happen if you try. The barbecue continued into the evening, voices and laughter carrying through the warm air. Somewhere across town, Diane Chambers was probably still convinced she'd been wronged. But here in Riverside Commons, a community was healing. One election at a time. One honest vote at a time. One person at a time, finding the courage to say, enough. That, I'd learned through those December days, was what democracy actually looked like when it worked. Not perfect, Not easy, but real and worth fighting for.